Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel once before. These guys are a very new addition to the Scottish craft beer scene and it seems that their main focus is going to be on sessionable, kind of drinkable beers actually, which should be quite interesting to watch over the next few years. The last beer I had from these guys was really impressive actually. I really enjoyed that, and the one we have today I think is a little bit more quirky and unusual, and that was the main reason that I picked this one up actually. So for this review we are going to head through to Edinburgh once again, Leith to be specific, and we're going to have a look at my second beer from Newbarns Brewery. So this particular beer is called the Oat Lager beer. It comes in at 4.8% ABV, and I think this should be really quite interesting actually. It's not often that you come across a lager beer with oats in it, to be honest. So yeah, very curious about this, I have to say. But yeah, the last beer I had from these guys was one of the paleos. I want to say the Citra Equinaut, if I'm remembering rightly, but that was a really beautifully done beer actually. And this is one of another three beers that you're going to see from Newbarns Brewery over the next little while. I'm quite glad that I'm getting the opportunity to review a few of these for you at such an early point in their history, and I certainly look forward to seeing what these guys are going to produce over the next little while. But yeah, hopefully this is another interesting beer. I think it should be a little bit quirky to say the least, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So let's go for it. 4.8% oat lager beer, this one. Quite unusual, as I say. But yeah, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Newbarns Brewery before, and we will add more to that in the fairly near future. There's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite regularly at the moment because I am enjoying a little bit of time at home in the motherland. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Newbarns Brewery then, on to my brewery notes. So Newbarns Brewery, as I've told you already, are very new on the scene. They were founded in 2020 and they're based in Leith in Edinburgh. So the four friends behind this brewery are Emma McIntosh, Gordon Mackenzie, Johnny Hamilton and Freddie Bjerkseth. So Gordon and Emma are a couple, and they moved down to London from the east coast of Scotland back in 2012. They hadn't actually planned to become brewers, but Gordon started working at Siren Brewery not long after it was founded back in 2013, while Emma started working at Kernel Brewery in early 2014. Both of them met Freddie in 2012, just before he began working at Beavertown, where he was the sales account manager, and Johnny also worked at Beavertown as well. He was in charge of the Tempest barrel aging project. I never had any of the beers from that actually. That's something I need to see if I can sort out. But then Gordon also went on to join Emma at the Kernel Brewery as well. So as you can see, these guys bring a hell of a pedigree from some of the top craft breweries in London back to Scotland with them, so that is pretty cool. But in 2018, Gordon and Emma decided it was time to return to Scotland, and they'd always wanted to start up their own brewery, but by the following year, Freddie and Johnny had joined them in Edinburgh, and then it was time for them to get started on Newbarns Brewery. But the branding of the beers, or the branding of the brewery I guess we should say, is inspired by a bunch of old beer mats that date from between the 1940s and 1980s, and these were actually found by Emma's dad at an old auction, which it's a pretty interesting way to get a hold of your branding, I have to say. It's one of the more kind of inventive stories that I've come across in reviewing all of these beers. But apparently the idea that they have with this brewery is that they're going to focus on the more kind of sessionable type beers, such as lagers and pale ales and stuff like this, kind of similar to what the Kernel do to an extent. They produce these kind of table beers and pale ales and lagers and stuff like that. They've got a few imperial stouts and things as well, right enough, and a few double IPAs and stuff like that. They will release the more kind of crazy things every so often, but yeah, the Kernel beers do tend to be the more of the more sessionable variety, I guess we could say. But yeah, I look forward to seeing what these guys release over the next little while. There's a few pilsners out there already. There's a few different lagers as well, a couple of pale ales, and I think there's a regular IPA, if I remember rightly too. And there's one or two darker beers starting to come out as well, and you will see one of those reviewed reviewed on the channel at some point very, very soon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. But as of January 2021, when I'm reviewing this beer for you, they have 16 different kinds of beer according to Untappd. So yeah, as I say, I look forward to seeing what other ones they're going to add to the range over the next little while. But definitely an interesting addition to the Scottish craft beer scene, and I look forward to I need to go down and visit the brewery once this whole COVID-19 thing buggers off. It would be cool to get these guys on the channel for a Meet the Brewery segment, so we'll see about making that happen at some point very, very soon. Yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Newbarns Brewery for the moment. Obviously these guys have a hell of a pedigree behind them, so they're going to be a really interesting addition to the Scottish craft beer scene. And Edinburgh, you know, there's some great breweries in Edinburgh. Campervan, Stewart Brewing, these guys now as well. There's a few others over there as well that, you know, they're not coming into my mind at the moment. But yeah, there's a really nice beer scene over in Edinburgh these days, and I do hope that I can, you know, go and film interviews with some of these guys. I need to get a few more of the Campervan beers actually, because that's a brewery that's only been touched upon once or twice on the channel. Their beers are a little bit difficult to get outside of Edinburgh, come to think of it. But yeah, if you want to learn more about these guys, as I say, check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's have a look at this beer itself then. So just to tell you about this one is a 4.8% lager beer. Apparently it's hopped with English Challenger and Kent Goldings from what I understand. There's oats, wheat and flaked barley malt in this one as well in the malt base. So yeah, really not sure what to expect from this one. I think it will be very interesting. I'm not sure if any of the English guys have reviewed this yet. I know that Harry at Blue Nose Beer Reviews had a couple of the beers from these guys ready to review, but whether they've been published or not, I honestly couldn't tell you. But yeah, oat lager beer, 4.8% ABV. I think this should be quite interesting. But there you can see the Newbarns Brewery symbol there, which looks very, very cool. But yeah, this should be very, very nice. Let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting of this one. Oh, I think I told you lies. It says it's English Admiral hops. I don't think I've had too many beers with Admiral hops, but remember, when it comes to the English hops, they tend to be quite, they tend to be a little bit more herbal than the German counterparts. So they tend to be a little bit more herbal. The grassiness isn't quite as zesty almost, and there's a wee touch more earthiness to them as well. So yeah, sorry, I told you lies about that. UK Admiral and UK Challenger in this one. This one was canned on the 18th of November 2020, so I'm drinking this beer when it is just a little bit, when it's maybe about 7 weeks old or so, just shy of 2 months. So it should still be in good condition, Let's get this guy out then and we'll get on with the tasting. Incidentally, this one is a 440ml can. I bought this actually from the House of Trembling Madness in York, so it's been from Edinburgh to York and then back up to Scotland again. So yeah, really good web shop this one. I was doing a big order from the House of Trembling Madness and I thought, well, why not have a go at this one. But yeah, probably at some stage I will do, when I come home another time, I might well do an order from Newbarns Brewery. We'll see. Probably the next time I come home they will have quite a few beers that I've not tried and I can just get like a mixed 6-pack or something like that. But yeah, that should be pretty nice actually. Just reposition that. But yeah, as you can see with this beer, it's poured kind of as you would expect. It just looks a little bit like some of these Munich Helles beers that I've had before. You know, as I've said on the channel numerous times before, I've been getting really into my lager beers again over the last maybe year and a half or something like that, and that's mainly been thanks to the fact that the Swedish breweries who I have, who I often have contact with, have been producing a lot more of them. So yeah, it's been really nice to have a go at some more lager beers, and this probably will be one of the more quirky ones that I'll come across in that over the last kind of year and a bit or whatever. But yeah, this beer, you can see it poured with about a finger of a frothy, I would say perfect white head on this one, very kind of soapy, perfect white head. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there. If I stick my fingers behind the glass, you can see this beer does have a really kind of a little bit of a haziness to it, but if we shine the light through it, it does have a wee bit more clarity than the glass would have you believe. It is maybe just a little bit of the kind of condensation around the edge of the glass there. But yeah, it certainly looks very nice. A little bit of a natural haze to it, this one, and I guess that will be from a mixture of the oats and the wheat in this one, to be honest with you. I can't imagine that the oats and the wheat make up too much of... they can't make up such a big percentage of the the malt base in this one, but we'll need to see. We'll need to see about that. I guess the malt in this one will probably be like a UK lager malt. There are a few really interesting ones out there from different things, but yeah, in terms of a lager beer, lovely kind of pale golden straw colour. It looks quite similar to some of the Munich Helles beers that you'll come across actually. So nothing overly surprising about this beer when you consider what style it is. It's got a bit of the natural haze that the oats and the wheat are going to give you, but it certainly does look pretty nice, I have to say. So yeah, interesting beer this one. Pardon me, interesting beer by the looks of it, getting a bit dry in the throat, must be a bit hot in here or whatever, but yeah, interesting beer by the looks of it. I said, let's have a little look at the aroma and see how we get on with this one. Ooh, that does come across quite nicely. Yeah, it really, you can smell, I mean, you smell the smoothness of the oats in this one straight away. Feel like I'm stating the obvious with this, but I did expect this beer to be quite straight shooting in terms of its aroma, and it really does come across like that, to be honest with you. So you can smell that there's a nice sort of white bready thing going on in this one underneath. Yeah, the wheat will give you some of that, of course, and then what I suspect is a UK lager malt. It's got a little bit of that really soft breadiness to it and just a little bit of the lighter crispiness. Probably the yeast is playing a bit of a role in here as well and giving the beer that nice kind of bready quality that it has, but very soft and white bready, really akin to like a Munich Helles beer actually. You of course get the Dortmunder Helles too, which is a little bit more hoppy, but this one definitely reminds me of a more, I would say, yeah, definitely a little bit of a more kind of, yeah, a little bit of a more kind of oaty, bready kind of thing. It's lovely actually. The more you smell this beer, the more the oats kind of start to saturate your nose a little bit. You get that sweetness and kind of smoothness that you would expect of them. There's maybe a tiny little bit of a sweet kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity note to the beer, but the smoothness of the oats, as you would expect when it's called an oat lager, that really dominates the malty side of the beer. But yeah, soft white bready notes underneath, a little bit of McVitie's digestive biscuit, and I think a big oaty presence, which isn't overly surprising, as I say. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, let's look at the green component of the beer. So yeah, there's a wee bit of earthiness coming out of the beer, which is what you would expect from the English hops, to be honest. And there is a wee bit of that herbal quality, but in fairness, and kind of unexpectedly, I'm noticing the floral notes and the grassy side of this beer a lot more than I expected. It's actually quite bright and it's almost quite wet in terms of its grassiness, if that makes sense. So yeah, there is a good little bit of floral aromaticity to this beer, a little bit of an almost wet grassiness too, but then you've got some really nice, you have some very, very nice just juicy fruity qualities to this beer also. So on the fruity side of things, it's got kind of what you would expect. Again, there's a little tiny hint of like an apricot quality to it. So a wee bit of an apricot, you know, a very soft kind of tropical fruit almost. Maybe a wee hint of like a sultana or something like that, a very, very light, you know, dried green grapey kind of note, something like that. But mainly it's like a soft kind of appley, peary kind of ester, a wee bit of a slightly lemony, citrusy kind of thing. But yeah, I really like how this one goes together in a sense. I really like everything that this beer has going for it. I mean, the more and more I smell of this, the more that I get that nice big oaty, malty quality out of it, and I have to say, I really kind of appreciate that. It's almost like a New England lager in a way, I have to say. It comes across a little bit like that big oaty smoothness that you expect of the New England IPAs just in a lager beer. So yeah, I wonder if that's something they've tried in New England actually. New England lager beer, that would be quite interesting. But yeah, remember the definition of a lager beer is cold fermentation, roughly about 10 degrees fermentation if I remember rightly, and those are bottom fermenting yeast. The ales of course ferment at like, you know, 17, 18 degrees higher temperatures. So yeah, that's definitely something you need to remember about these beers. But yeah, this one I think smells as if it's going to be very, very nice. So take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. I'm really, really curious to see what this beer is going to have in store for us. This one is the Oat Lager. Is it just called Oat Lager? Yeah, just the Oat Lager beer, 4.8% ABV from Newbarns Brewery in Leith in Edinburgh. I think this is going to be awesome. Take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma, as I said. It's got everything you'd kind of expect, to be honest with you, but it smells very, very nice. More and more oaty the more you smell of it. But let's taste this beer. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that is really well done once again. Yeah, that's it's not a surprise. It's just really well executed, and I think that's what you're going to get with Newbarns Brewery. You're going to get beers that are just very, very well crafted, actually. So yeah. You cannot complain. Absolutely cannot complain. But yeah, lovely beer for sure. Yeah, this is, you know, really, really nicely executed actually. It's, you know, this beer would never pass in Germany, of course, because the oats would kind of count as an adjunct, I think. I don't know, does wheat count as an adjunct? I mean, you know, in Germany you've got the Reinheitsgebot, but you know, I honestly don't know whether, yeah, wheat and oats, would oats count as an adjunct beer? You've got the Hefeweizens and things, of course, but yeah, that's a really interesting point to make about this beer. I think it really comes across as just like a very, very smooth Munich Helles in a lot of ways. It does have a nice degree of crispness to it from the carbonation as well. So yeah, it's a very, very smooth beer, this one actually. You know, it's as I say, it's another really interesting and new addition to the Scottish beer scene. I mean, one of my local breweries, Williams Brothers, they do really easy drinking sessionable beers. You know, Caesar Augustus from Williams Brothers is one of my favourite Scottish beers, and I like the Schiehallion Pilsner from Harveston Brewery, who are also in Clackmannanshire as well. But it's nice to have another brewery in addition to West. There's West through in Glasgow. It's nice to have an Edinburgh brewery that are doing lager beers like this and things. So, you know, that's probably when I come home every time to Scotland, I'll probably end up with a good few lager beers from Newbarns and things, that's for sure. But yeah, I really like how this one goes together in that sense. It's a solid beer in my opinion. So big thumbs up to Newbarns Brewery for this one. This is it's very, very easy to drink. I'd love to try this on tap actually and just see how much smoother it gets there, but in the can, very, very good. So yeah, let's try and break down this beer then and just describe it a little bit. Very straight shooting, but just lovely. So straight away with this beer you get that nice soft white bready sort of thing that blankets the middle of your tongue. As you move across as you move towards the back third of your tongue, you can feel there's a little bit of a kind of crispness on that border region between middle third and back third of your palate. That just kind of gives you a wee bit of dryness to the beer. Do wonder, maybe is there a little touch of Pilsner malt in this? Wouldn't be surprised just from the kind of dryness that you're getting to the beer there. But as you go on to that back third of your palate, you get a nice smooth wheaty quality to the beer, which I think is great. So yeah, I really like that about this one. The kind of big smoothness that the beer has on that back third of your palate is really, really nice. So yeah, I think that's the wheat that's given it a little bit of the thickness there. I think the yeast is playing a role as well. But then as you move further forward, you do get a really nice, you do get a very nice kind of oatiness there. You can feel on top of the kind of lighter bready quality, there's just a little bit of a kind of oaty smoothness to the beer as well, which is really, really good. So yeah, the quality of this beer I think is really very nice actually. So yeah, it goes together just really, really well. Where to go with this one after that? I mean, the malt base is very, very straight shooting. Soft white bread underneath, that blankets the whole of the middle and the back third of your palate. Border region between these two areas, it's got a little bit of an almost kind of Pilsner malt crispness. Thicker wheaty notes on the back. That smoothens out as you come further forward. The thickness drops away. Then as you go into that kind of middle part of the palate, you get the nice smooth oaty characters coming out. Perhaps there is a wee touch of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing going on as well. And I think that, again, suits the beer really nicely. It just adds a wee bit of a sweetness to the smoothness that it already has. But yeah, I like this, absolutely, I like it. But yeah, in the back corners of the palate you've got a nice little bit of you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there. As you move further forward, we'll focus on the hops now of course, but in the back corners of the palate there is a wee bit of the earthiness there. As you move further forward, a little bit of the herbal quality comes out, and it spreads forward a little bit actually, and then almost just on the front, kind of just before you reach the front corners of the palate, you start to get some of the kind of bright floral aromaticity out of the beer, and then round the front curve of the palate it's a little bit lighter and grassy, and there's a wee bit more sort of zestiness coming out of the beer as well. So I do like that about this one, I have to say. Yeah, solid beer in my mind. I really like that for sure. Yeah, the hoppy side of the beer, just the wee bit of bitterness that adds to the beer, I think suits it, and it builds a good bridge between the kind of slightly, what I suspect is a little bit of Pilsner malt. It's got a wee bit of that kind of, it just gives the beer a little bit of bitterness to go with the slight dryness that it has as well at that point in the palate. But yeah, the hoppy side of this beer is done really nicely. The herbal side of the English hops comes out really nicely as well. But yeah, really nicely executed beer once again. But on that front third of your palate, as I always say, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. If you go towards the back of that front third of your palate, you can feel again the oats start to almost thicken up a wee bit, and you've got a very kind of, you've got a slightly thicker oaty quality on that border region. But for me, as you reach just behind that, a little bit of a citrusy zest, and as you move and move and move further forward, it's a wee bit more, how would you say, it's a little bit more apricot-y like, and a little bit more apricot-y like, and a little bit more kind of, you know, lemon and limey. It does get a wee bit more lemon. The lemon lime notes come out a little bit further forward, but then behind that it's almost like a little bit peary. I don't really get so much in the way of apples. There's maybe a wee tiny little bit of that typical appley sort of peary kind of thing there. The pears I think are quite prominent. After you get that little apricot-y note, that little smooth apricot-y note, as you reach the kind of front half of that front third of your tongue, if that makes sense, you start to get more of the appley, peary type things, and then right on the front edge of your palate, it's a sort of more lemony, grassy, zesty kind of thing that comes out of the beer. So yeah, I really like how that goes together in this one for sure. I think it's very, very nicely done actually. So thumbs up to Newbarns Brewery for this one. It's a solid beer, this. Very drinkable, very sessionable, can't knock it in the slightest, so great stuff. You know, I think it goes together really quite well. I have to admit, if I was tasting this blind, I'd probably struggle to notice that this beer had oats. I would probably think that it was like a Czech, I think I probably would think this was like a Czech Svetli or something like that. It's got a little bit more of the, if we think about it just in the context of lager beers, the oats and the wheat I think give it a little bit more of that kind of thickness and smoothness you would expect of the Czech varieties of lager beer. I mean, the Munich, the equivalent of that, of course, would be the Munich Helles, because you've got all these kind of the German and Czech versions of these different beers. But yeah, if I was blind tasting this, I reckon I would say that it was a Czech Svetli, like a Czech blonde lager beer. That's probably what I would come up with this one. I don't think I would pick out that this beer had oats in it straight away. I really don't think that, but they just add a really nice degree of smoothness to it, and it's quite interesting to know that. I don't think I would like to have done this beer as a blind tasting, to be honest with you, because it's how would you say, I think it's nice to try something like this and know what it is and just think about it a little bit. That's one of the reasons why I do these videos. I just enjoy the education of learning about how different ingredients behave, and this is the first time, as far as I'm aware, that I've had a lager beer with oats in it. I don't think it's the first time I've had one with wheat in it, but yeah, it certainly is the first time with oats as far as I'm aware, and it works. It really does work. So thumbs up to Newbarns Brewery for trying something a little bit different. So yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel then, I would describe this beer as being at the top end a light-bodied, bottom end a mid-bodied. The carbonation does have a wee bit of crispness to it, would we say? Yeah, it's got a wee bit of crispness to it for sure. There's a little bit of oiliness to this beer overall. I would say it has a slight oily mouthfeel to it, but again it retains that kind of cleanliness you expect of a Scottish beer. We're always very, very proud of our tap water in Scotland. Rightly so, I think. But this beer, it does have a little bit of more oiliness to it than some of the other Scottish beers that you're going to come across, and again I suspect that's the oats. So yeah, very clean but slightly more oily leaning lager beer, this one. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I think this is maybe like 20 or 25 IBUs, something like that, probably nearer 20 I would think. But the malt base, as I say, really quite smooth, nice little bit of a kind of oaty, as I say, just the oats really smoothing it out and just give you a little bit of a more, just a little touch of almost creaminess to it, but you've got a wee touch of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuit. You know what, I think the more and more that I drink of this beer, I get a wee touch of sweetness in the middle part of your palate. But yeah, the hoppy side I think just adds a nice contrast to that. There's a wee bit of dryness in the malt base there too, and then the fruits are just a little bit wet but still a little bit juicy, and then there's a wee bit of citrusy zest there on the kind of front tip of your palate too. But a lovely, lovely beer, this one, and I have to say, on the basis of the two beers that I've had from these guys so far, I can see them getting quite a bit of recognition actually. I think they're going to do some really interesting stuff over the next little while. I look forward to the next beer that I have from them, which I'm not sure which of the two I'm going to do yet actually, but one of them is dark and one of them is another lager beer, so you'll see those at some point in the future. But yeah, it's a lovely beer, this one. I would describe it, yeah, top end of light bodied, very easy drinking, and a really just quirky beer. But I wonder if this is going to be a core brew. I think they said this was going to be a core brew beer, so you'll probably be able to get a hold of this one quite easily actually. But yeah, let's leave it at that for this review. Really nicely executed beer, this one, a little bit quirky in the sense, but you know, I think it's the two beers that I've had so far from Newbarns I've been very not improved with, very impressed with, I should say. So yeah, I look forward to seeing what these guys produce over the next little while, so let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Newbarns Brewery. We will return to these guys at some point in the fairly near future, but this was a great beer. I really enjoyed this. Let me know your own thoughts on it in the comment section below. As I said, check out my social media, check out Newbarns Brewery, and I will catch you guys very soon. The Oat Lager beer, 4.8% ABV from Newbarns Brewery in Leith over in Edinburgh. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and catch you guys in the next review.